Hello, this is Kenny Ryan, and I'm showing off my game Too Many Heroes. So basically, this is a four-player competitive deck building game where players can build their own decks to compete against each other and try to fight bosses to earn loot. So right now, this is a setup as of four players who have each taken their turn. So just to talk about each of these, basically this player right here, you can see there's a discard. This would have been a anvil, which a player had healed themselves. This is their player deck. This would be standing for that they have a mace and a companion equipped, and then this would be their hand. So like they have another mace, and then they also have another item which would let them search for a card in their deck. This is their action card. So after they're ending their turn, they would roll, and when you roll, you find out what action you can actually do. If you roll a 6, you can choose any action. If you roll a 1, you can only choose one, and it works that number and below. So let's come around to the next player. Right now, you can see that they have the boss that is targeting them, which the boss is the character that is currently in the middle. So right now, this boss does 2 damage to a player that it attacks, and it has 10 health. And then basically, players who attack a boss will get loot based off of how much damage they do. So the player who does the most damage would get 3 loot, and the player who kills it gets 1 extra bonus loot. But they could have maybe second place and get 3 and tie with the player who did the most damage. The player who did the most damage would get to keep the boss, and if it was a tie, they would roll to see who gets to keep it. So here is a player who drew a card that let them draw 2 extra cards. So looking at their hand, they got a lot of duplicates. They already have that staff equipped, and they already have the helmet. But they do have this weapon. Now looking at it, it's a level 2 versus a level 3, meaning that they couldn't upgrade this weapon from this one to this one. So they would usually want to have this lower one underneath this, so playing that one first, but they probably drew this one after drawing this. So you are allowed to lay higher levels down before, but when this weapon breaks due to its durability, which this is attack and durability, and this is just durability, but when this breaks, if there is something underneath, they would get to keep that. So if the case was that they had this sword and then this staff, when this staff takes 5 damage, this would break, go to their discard pile, and they would still have this in play. And when there is damage on a weapon, so let's just actually take one of these dice. So this weapon does 4 damage, and it also has 4 durability. So I could put 2 durability damage on it when I got attacked by that boss. And the player, when they're attacked, they can distribute damage anywhere they want on their in-play cards, even their player card, which are mistakenly not out. But there are player cards, which are cards that players get to customize as well. They look like this, but basically you get to draw your own character on here, name your hero, and then they all do 1 damage, and they all have 10 health. So from there, they would actually, from this point forward, only do 2 damage with this weapon. So in the case of if the boss did more damage, they possibly would want to put 5 on, break this weapon, and then their weapon would still do 4 damage. Meaning that, even though this is discarded, they lose its ability, but they still have a weapon that does enough damage. You could just put it on something like these diamond boots, which wouldn't affect you. It's just basically buffer damage, so that way you can keep your character's health high and not die. Coming over to this character, he has another companion. This one lets you negate damage or tell a player to re-roll, basically, if they're attacking. However, characters that have, or not characters, but companions that have a 0, whenever you take damage, they would die immediately. So it wouldn't matter if you did damage to yourself, like using this ability. This companion would die immediately by using this card's ability to increase the damage of the card by taking damage to your player. So that would break. So you have to be careful of which types of cards you use together. Coming over to the final person who's in play, they have a full set of armor right now and a weapon. So the only slot they're missing is a companion piece. And basically, when a player is going to attack or do any of their actions, and basically they do roll, let's say they are attacking the boss. So fight the boss. The way that a player would do that is they would take a die and they'd roll it. So, okay, we got a 6. So I could choose anything. So I'm going to attack a player. So now that I'm looking at my cards, these are all just buffer damage. So these don't actually increase my damage dealt to other players. So looking at my player card being a 1, and the this card, which is a 6, total, I will do 7 damage. So if I chose, I'm going to target this player. So I choose to do 7 damage. They would have to take 7 damage to their character, or they can basically distribute it any way they want. So they could go 3, discard this, and then they decide, I'm just going to put 2 on this. So now they still have to take 2 damage. So they have their player card, and they take 2 damage, and they put it on their player card. And that would be 4 for these 2, and the 3 from this thing's health. So now this unicorn will only do 2 damage. So now if we went from that player over to this player, it's on their turn, and they rolled. Okay, so 3. So the boss, so the player has the option to retarget the boss, which currently it's on this player. They could fight the boss, or they could draw an extra card. Now, I think fighting the boss for this character would probably be the most beneficial, though they can't kill it. They'd be able to get loot when the boss is finally killed by another player. So in total, they chose to attack the boss, so they would do 2 damage. So they would take 2 damage, and they would want to use their colored dice, so that way they know that they're the one who is attacking, and they put their damage on the boss. So now coming over back to this player, just real quick, we'll do a quick run. So since the boss is on them, and it's their turn, so they look at all their cards. Oh, they got a new companion, so they're going to equip the companion, and they're going to roll. 4. 4 could let them kill the boss. So the boss only has 10 health. So right now they have 3, 4, and the other armor doesn't do anything. And then their player card, which is 1, so 8. So they do 8 damage. Actually, yeah, they would kill the boss. They would do 8 damage and kill it. So they would have the most damage, so they would get 3 prize cards, and they would get 1 for being the killer. Now, the player over here who had killed the boss would get 2 loot, because the card says player comes in second gets 2 loot. So looking at these loot cards, gold is only for discarding, so it's kind of a bad card to get, but it's a part of the luck. There's only 20 of these in the 140 card deck. And then this card right here is a weapon. And then this player is obviously going to get a lot of good stuff, hopefully, because they have a lot more cards. They have twice the amount. So these are ancient treasures, or sacred treasures. And if a player collects all 5 of these and has them equipped, they win the game. And then, see, he's got these boots. So basically, that means that the following turn, they're a higher level, 4. They could place them over top of their lower level 1. And these treasures, you can only equip 1 per turn, but they would be able to equip both of those and hopefully get the last 3. And they could also upgrade their sword their following turn. So once you roll, your turn would end. And since the boss was killed, the player who has the boss getting targeted on them does not take damage. However, if this player did not kill this boss, they would take the 2 damage, and they would have to place the 2 damage somewhere on their character. So, 2 on the skeleton, and that's it. And then hopefully they're able to distribute the damage to everything, and if the player takes all 10 damage to their health, they would die. Now there are 5 bosses total. Their stats go all the way up to 50 and 10 damage. Usually by the end of the game, players are all stacked to be able to combat the monsters. It doesn't end in 1 turn or 2 turns like the first boss does, but it kind of scales up with the players as they get better loot. So from there, since the player did kill the boss, they don't take damage, but it goes to the next player. And then same thing on their turn. So they rolled a 2. The boss, so this player would get to keep the boss, so that's a total of 10 points. And then the next player would be trying to attack this boss. So right now, they rolled a 2, so they are going to attack the boss. That's 0, that's 1, and that's 7. So, and then they have their player card, which is 1. So 7, 8, 9. This player would do 9 damage. So they would take 2 of their dice, and they'd place 6, 3, and they'd have 9 on the boss. But now the boss is on them, so they'll take 4 damage. So they have to take 4 damage from the boss and place it on their stuff. So they're going to put it maybe on their weapon. It lowers the damage, but they don't have much option. And since this player was attacked and they have a level, a companion with a 0, this companion unfortunately dies. So basically that's how this whole game runs through. It has a bunch of different strategies, and since players can build their own decks, there's open possibilities for hundreds of combinations. There's a total of 122 cards, which is displayed on the bottom of a card. So this is card number 37 of 122. The loot cards are separate from that. There are 41 additional loot cards, but there are duplicates in the loot decks. This is a standardized deck, whereas the 4 decks are player-made. There has been tests with custom-built decks, ones that are supposed to win in 1 turn, getting as many cards and as much damage as possible. However, with the amount of luck and the chances of rolling, it's a little bit harder to kill another player early game, just because you have such a difficulty making it guaranteed that you're going to attack a player. So from there, basically, thank you for watching, and I hope you'll check out this game and play it yourself.